The next 3 UFC events are now being canceled, despite Dana White recently saying they were still on. Ariel Helwani tweeted the next 3 U events on March 21st, March 28th, and April 11th have officially been canceled. Dana White officially made the call to employees earlier today. UFC 249's fate, however, has not been decided. Unclear if all the fighters scheduled to compete on those cards will be compensated in any way. Make sure you subscribe to Full Mount MMA to keep up with updates on the current situation. As soon as we get more word on UFC 249, we'll be sure to update you guys right away. Khabib Nurmagomedov gets another present at the American Kickboxing Academy.
Inside? No dogs?
I don't know. No dogs in there, but it's a package.
There's a lot of bullshit around.
Hey, Islam, you're not the only one that gets packages here. Khabib gets packages too.
This is mine.
What?
No,
What are you talking about?
1 second, brother. 1 second, brother. Coach, give me this, brother. Just show me name. Name.
What?
Brother, this is my brother. Name. Look at this. Hey, coach.
What?
Money.
What?
No way.
Is there money?
Coach,
Khabib, is there money?
What?
1 second.
1 second.
1 second, this is under my name, brother. Relax, brother, relax.
What do you mean? Islam, is it yours? I thought this was on me. Oh.
Hey, relax, because they don't know my name is like correct. That's why they say.
Hey, bye, brother. This is his name.
Brother, who this guy? Who this? Only time 15. Brother, just come to time come 15, brother. Since 2016, 15.
He takes all my money.
Coach.
Okay, maybe. Okay, my sis. Two. Oh yeah, Islam is like crazy. Let me see. Woman.
Why money? Why money?
He got money?
This is like crazy, coach.
Oh, wow.
I never see this in my life.
1 second.
But who's this person?
How much?
But who's this person?
1 second.
God, now I'm rich.
Let's go to the pizza.
How much I have?
30, раз, два, три, четыре, 35.
Who's the person saying this?
1 second, 35. Умножа на 20. $700.
$700?
And this one, Louis Vuitton.
Wow, Louis Vuitton too?
Coach.
Don't put this in.
Oh man.
You can cut.
Cut.
Coach, I understand now.
You understand? Yeah.
Because she wanna. $700. Hey, give everybody money.
He can buy lunch first.
Hey, you gotta buy your brother's lunch now. You're a rich guy.
Where you going, Islam? Let's go somewhere together.
Kenny Florian on the Florian podcast speaks on Israel Adesanya versus Yoel Romero. He says don't be surprised if you see Paulo Costa knocked out on the canvas in his next fight with Adesanya.
Yeah, listen, I would say this, is that you also have to play to your strengths, right? There was a guy named Robert Whittaker who tried to go at Adesanya as well, and he got knocked out. You have to look at the strengths of a fighter, and you have to look at your own strengths as a fighter as well. And I get that, people appreciate that, but I know we'd all like to think that, Robert Whittaker will be remembered as that guy who was aggressive, but people are going to look at that L at the end of the day, and they're going to see the knockout right there. And people are going to forget about the fact that he was moving forward. All they're going to recognize is the L and the W. And this is a championship fight between 2 elite fighters, right? And again, Joanna went forward. She made that risk of moving forward and not being so defensively responsible. Not only did she take a complete beating in that fight, but she also didn't get the win. Whether, she could have won that fight. It was a close fight. But here she is. She has all that damage, and she has an L at the end of the day. Here's the thing. We forget about Anderson Silva's performances in his main events. We forget about the one against Damian Maia. We forget again about the one against Patrick Cote. Anderson Silva is the same kind of striker as Adesanya. And that's why they had such a close fight. They're both counter strikers. When you get 2 counter strikers in there and they choose to fight that style, you're gonna get some fights like that, unfortunately. And it was very tactical, and it almost worked for Romero. Romero waited for him.
Yes.
Adesanya, and now this is not an excuse for Adesanya, because Adesanya is way more comfortable moving backwards, countering, and it's way harder to be taken down moving backwards than it is moving forward. When you're moving forward, you hit those reactive takedowns. When you're moving forward, you also become way more susceptible to a big shot that Romero actually landed in round one, kind of blinded Adesanya for a few seconds there. So Adesanya is way more comfortable moving back than he is moving forward. Romero recognized that, and that's why Adesanya was very careful to move forward. He was probing and prodding more than actually trying to take it to Romero because of that danger. And guess what? Romero kind of did the same thing too. It takes two to tango, like Longo said. Romero could have gone forward as well. And that's why I think Costa will bring it to Adesanya. We'll see a much better fight because of their style matchups. But don't be surprised if you see Costa knocked out on the canvas in their fight as well.
Matt Serra on UFC Unfiltered speaks on Israel Adesanya versus Yoel Romero.
You know how they say everybody has a plan until they get hit?
Yeah.
I think Adesanya was thinking the same exact thing until he felt that power of that first shot.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden he's rethinking stepping in. And you know what? I've been thinking about it lately. And, you know, Costa's saying that Yoel's not to blame. And I understand he's got a victory over him and they had a barn burner. But he did say this. He said, and this is true, he did say that Yoel fights the same every time. So why are we to believe, because I understand he's getting a title shot and he's got the wrestling background, but why are we to believe is he's going to fight now at 42 years old, whatever it is, to fight differently now, even with a title shot, differently than he ever fought before, that he's going to go in there with the eye? Why should we think that? Dana even said he made a mistake in thinking that.
And Michael Bisping on the Believe You Me podcast gives his thoughts on Edson Barboza asking to be released from the UFC.
Edson Barboza has asked for his release from the UFC to test free agency waters. Edson says, I'm very thankful for these almost 10 years that I've been working for the company. I gave my best every single fight to put on a show for the fans, but I think it's time to move on. I don't have more time to wait, so please let me go. Wow. I'm actually kind of blown away and surprised by that statement there. Edson Barboza has been a fan favorite for the longest time. Been a part of some amazing fights, wants to test the free waters. I'm looking at his record right now, and as we see, 4 out of his last 5 he has lost. He lost to Khabib, no shame in that, still the champion. Lost to Kevin Lee, tremendous fighter, no shame in that. He beat Dan Hooker. By the way, when he beat Dan Hooker, that was a fucking sensational fight. As we know, Barboza is one of the best kickers. Lost to Justin Gage, he knocked out, and then lost a split decision to Paul Felder. So, yeah, if you look at that, to your point entirely, Lewis, right? He's struggling against the top dogs. That doesn't mean he's not exciting, doesn't mean he's not a name, doesn't have fan recognition, because he does, he has all of those things, but he's never going to get the championship money in the UFC because the competition is too hard. I'm not saying that he's not world class, I'm not saying he's not good enough, and a lot of those fights were close, but when you've lost 4 of your last 5, I understand, because to your point, you know, some of these other organizations that are trying to build their names, trying to establish their brand in the MMA space, they need stars. You know, Bellator have done this for a long time. ONE FC are doing it. So what they do, they pay over the odds to get somebody like an Edson Barboza because it's good for their brand. I don't know what Demetrius Johnson gets paid for ONE FC, but if I'm not mistaken, I believe it's a huge sum of money, I think. And Barboza's probably hearing these kind of rumblings and thinking, hey, let me out the UFC. Let me go and make some massive money. Not that UFC can't pay massive money, because they clearly can. But if you're losing 4 out of your last 5, you're not going to get those paychecks because the competition is too stiff. You know what I mean? So it's not the UFC's fault. I wouldn't. You know, I mean, would you pay someone $1 million if they were losing 4 out of the last 5? You just wouldn't. It's not smart business sense. So it's not the UFC's fault. But I kind of understand why Edson's going to try and go and exploit is a strong word, but he's going to go try and take advantage of the situation with these brands. They're trying to establish themselves. Well, it sounds like he might have fought. Oh no, he can't afford out his contract. Otherwise, the contract would just be null and void. It would be expired. So he obviously must have one last fight on his contract. and he's asking to get out of it, which is an unusual move. It really is. But anyway, whatever happens, best of luck to Edson Barboza. I, for one, would love to see him still in the UFC. Whenever I think of Edson Barboza, the one thing that comes to my mind, and everybody's mind, is that spinning wheel kick knockout of Terry Ettin. Old mate Terry from Liverpool, shout out Terry Ettin. But that's all you think of, that sickening knockout that he landed on Terry Ettin. But yeah, whatever. Best of luck, Edson, whatever you decide to do.
That's going to wrap it up for the news. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to drop a like down below and subscribe to Full Mount MMA on YouTube. Here are the 3 top comments from last video. The first one's in reference to Tyron Woodley versus Leon Edwards being canceled. It says, I'd much rather see Woodley versus Covington anyways. The second one says they need to make Covington versus Woodley. Everyone wants to see it. And the final one says, the most Kevin Lee thing to say is he didn't choke me, I choked myself out after tapping to being choked. Those were the 3 top comments from last video. If you want to be featured in the next video, be sure to drop a comment down below on this one.